Welcome back to the TelecomTV Summit on Telcos and Public Cloud and our live Q&A show. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and this is the first of 2 live Q&A shows. It's your chance to ask questions related to the evolving relationship between CSPs and the public cloud providers. Now, earlier today, we held a panel discussion that sought to identify the unique requirements of telcos as they look to move workloads across to public cloud infrastructures. And we have already received questions from you, quite a few of them actually, and our panelists are back to help answer them during this live show. Now, if you haven't yet sent in a question, there's still a chance for you. Please do so now and use the Q&A form that's right here on the website. And as always, your co-host for the Q&A show is Ray Maistre, who's the editorial director here at TelecomTV. Now, Ray, a couple of months back at MWC, you spoke with Deutsche Telekom and Google Cloud about this very issue. And it's highly relevant, isn't it? Because it focused on the telco-specific requirements, exactly what we are covering today.
Yeah, that's right, Guy. Goodness, was it only a couple of months ago. But during MWC 23, I hosted a discussion between Abdu Mudazir, Group CTO at Deutsche Telekom, and Bikash Kohli, VP of Global Networking at Google Cloud, that I'm pretty sure got other network operators excited about the impact that public cloud platforms can have on telco operations. Now, if you haven't seen that session, a recording of it is available in the video section of TelecomTV's Telcos and Public Cloud channel. It was very clear from that discussion that DT and Google, their interaction, it was following a great deal of work over a long period of time. But Deutsche Telekom is now seeing, quite extraordinary results in terms of operational efficiencies from its use of public cloud capabilities, something that Deutsche Telekom could not have achieved otherwise. But once an operator commits to the public cloud, of course, what does that mean in terms of the medium and long term? And why are we hearing about companies reversing their decisions to run certain applications on public cloud platforms? There's a lot to consider, big decisions to take, but I have no doubt that telcos right now are weighed down with a fear of missing out if they don't follow in the footsteps of telcos such as Deutsche Telekom.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. There's certainly a lot of FOMO going around right now, but not if you're a TelecomTV viewer. Right, on with the show. Let's meet our guests who are eager to help with all of your questions. And joining us live on the programme today are Mark Gilmore, who is Chief Technology Officer for ConnectiviTree Europe, Ross Ortega, who is VP Product Management Asia for Operators Microsoft, and Rahul Attri, who is Consulting Analyst with Appledore Research. Hello everyone, good to see you all, and Ross, thanks so much for stepping in for Sean there at the last minute. It's good to have you on the show with us. So to start us off, over to you, Ray.
Yep, thanks, Guy. And so the first question for our panelists today is, to what extent do public cloud companies need to develop telco-specific tools to win business from the telcos? Or do telcos just use the same systems and applications as other enterprises? Mark, maybe we can start with you on this. To what extent are the public cloud companies needing to develop things specifically for the telcos?
Thank you very much for the question. Well, let me, 2 parts to it. I think on the IT infrastructure and that, I think telcos are like any other enterprise, and really can operate in that space, but with the standard or the portfolio pieces that the public cloud providers have become very adept at and serve those. But more particularly, I think we're talking more about telco workloads, and in those scenarios, well, I think the telcos need to, the cloud providers need to do more work. Well, they've done good work so far, but need to do more work in understanding the telco market. I think we like to think of ourselves as somewhat unique, or have our own challenges and our own opportunities, and understand our own space. We're used to an environment of providing high availability, high reliability, etc. And so and not best effort services. And I think that's where we've seen huge advances from the public cloud operators in that direction to kind of court the telco environment. Having said that, I'm somewhat reluctant to move some of our operations and management capability and network functions into the public cloud space. So yeah, maybe I'm not the best person to ask on that, but I think they are making great strides. But I do see the benefit of using public cloud for us where it makes sense for us, but it doesn't mean it's everywhere. I'm not quite in that same space as Deutsche Telekom, for example.
No, sure, absolutely. I mean, Deutsche Telekom is kind of a specific example, but I think there's still a big question mark in the industry. To what extent can the public cloud platforms provide specific capability to the telcos? And clearly that's happened with Deutsche Telekom, and is happening with other operators. But is it the case for all operators? So Rahul, you wanted to come in here, and then Ross will come to you. So Rahul next.
I think there are two aspects to it. The triangle, regulatories. I think we all know what comes and what are the different challenges which comes with regulation to move all the applications to the public cloud. That needs to get somewhere. We as an operator community, we as the ecosystem players, partners from application providers and operator themselves has to come to a point that what application makes sense. The other part of this is we discussed this in our panel discussion as well, that this is not one layer problem. These are multiple level problems. We have to think about infrastructure coupled with network functions and their architecture coupled with services, because RAN plus core plus transport plus internet pairing makes a data call or a voice call. Single network function in case of telecoms just provide the signaling or not the complete services in our case. The fourth leg of this is management. And I think I personally feel that public cloud tooling on the management layer is even far ahead of what telcos are used to. We still are stuck in PM, FM, 15 minutes and 1 hour of aggregations. But telco cloud or telco players or hyperscalers are already there with, let's say, event-based systems, policy management on top of elasticity, scaling out and scaling in as well. On the services layer, we have to take stride to meet somewhere in the between, because the normal IT apps or web scaler apps for now, apart from the telco apps, are not that complex in terms of service layer, because multiple applications coming together at different location, different federated clusters need to start working together. Applications, I think the life cycle of application, hyperscalers are having all the tools to make that happen. Infrastructure, yes, they are already there and they can provide the resiliency and availability given the cost aspects and the ROI which comes with it. So for me, I think the services layer and the looking at all these layers together as a solution, and all people sitting together, the operator, the application providers, because their architecture needs to be as cloud native as possible, and the regulatory bodies would be able to solve this problem or probably take us away from this telco versus non-telco application kind of debate.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Rahul. And Ross, let's come to you next. I mean, to what kind of extent are specific capabilities needed for telcos in terms of what the public cloud providers can offer?
Yeah, let's first start with kind of what's in common, right? So public cloud's been running enterprise workloads for over a decade. The efficiencies that you get from public cloud really come from automation and standardization. So trying not to be very bespoke. And so fundamentally now, how can we leverage all the tooling that we've already built for enterprises and employ that for the telco workloads? Now, when you go down and look at the telco workloads, you have virtual network functions, containerized network functions, But fundamentally, at the heart of it, it's VMs and containers. Now, what is unique or special about this is what is the high performance, and more importantly, the predictable performance you get from that. So cloud is multi-tenant, on-premises is by definition single tenant. So we've been looking at that and you heard Sean talk earlier about what should be on premises, what should be in public cloud, and how do you kind of morph that functionality over time as public cloud gets stronger and stronger. So there are things that we want to leverage from enterprises, but for us, when we look at that, we do think some things probably do belong on premises because of latency issues, maybe compliance issues, things like that. So then the challenge becomes, how do you bring public cloud technologies down to on-premises? And again, that all comes from standardization. So you use APIs, you use software-defined networking, you have standardized topologies. And so once you do that, you standardize, and now at massive scale, you get the benefits of all that automation. And then on the public cloud side of things, logging analytics, machine learning, AI, all this interesting things that are coming forward, that's what public cloud is really, really strong at, that you may not be able to afford to run those same technologies on premises. So it is really just a balance of figuring out how we bring public cloud. The other aspect then we need to consider from the public cloud perspective, what does a carrier-grade SLA mean? What does that mean in terms of reliability? What does that mean in terms of failover? What does it mean in terms of response time and fixing things, as well as having SLAs around how do we keep things up to date? How do we patch things? How do we get in this more fluid motion of having constant updates so that everybody, the whole ecosystem, is moving forward with these technologies and staying up to date? So that's kind of what we've been looking at.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's the catalyst for this question, really, around the SLAs, because there's no doubt that the requirements of a telco are very different from, say, a company in retail or manufacturing or mining or something like that. So, okay, excellent, great set of answers there. Thanks very much, Guy. Let's move on to the next audience question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray. Yes, some great comments there to that question. Well, here's our next viewer question. And the question is, telcos talk of the need for highly reliable mission-critical networks and worry that public cloud can't deliver on this condition. But who says this? How true is this fear? Surely a public cloud service can be configured to telco grade given the right engineering resources. So it's a question that really takes that statement that maybe we all take for granted. We hear it an awful lot of times, don't we? But we run mission critical networks. We're a different use case. We've got our own unique requirements. But what's stopping the public cloud companies from actually delivering that? Is it a true statement? Rahul, perhaps we can come over to you to see what you're seeing from the industry and whether or not this is a truism or if it's just it's outdated statement.
Very interesting question, and especially the part says who. I'm an optimist, and I believe what Ross was saying earlier, that what hyperscalers have been able to do is get the product thinking, and what they believe is if things get repeatable, that has to be a product feature, that has to be standardized, that has to be templarized. And I think when we talk about telco players, they are just tuned to look at application stack running in certain way. When we talk about resiliency on-prem, we talk about resiliency. It's always a factor of how many data centers you have, what kind of geography you are in, what kind of applications are deployed. You are having a pre-configured cluster, or you are spinning off a cluster runtime. What kind of applications, where are they deployed? So it's not only infrastructure per se. It's not only the application stack per se, like we were discussing earlier as well. It's the services which end user consume. When we talk about IT application, they're smart enough to develop that in case a session is initiated, they can locally host some of the session information, whether by a technology such as GraphQL or locally hosting some of the DB requests for that customer, which could be a cache or other kind of methodologies. In some of the applications that might not be possible. In those kind of application, you have to do load balancing or sessions into an active database. But it's not only the cloud or infrastructure layer which makes the network resilient. It's a trade-off between the ROI and the amount of resources you want to pre-configure and have them as resiliency. On the other hand, I think cloud as a technology provides with the capability to have as much resiliency as much reliability and availability in the network. Hyperscaler even provide that beyond geographies per se. But we have some regulations, we have other factors with which we, like latency and jitter, for example, and the kind of applications we are deploying, spectrum, and how far it has to be from the customer premises. So I think that there are some aspects which need to be looked into the architecture point of view, what kind of application, and then what regulation come through. On the other hand, I think hyperscalers are open enough to standardize even more needful feature set or tooling from telco ecosystem growing. And I've seen in recent past, from design time to runtime to upgrade to lifecycle management, defining the policies, kind of images we want to use for what kind of applications and tooling is slowly getting more and more enriched in case for telcos as well. So I'm again, as I said, I'm an optimist. I seriously believe that we have reached to a point where telcos can more openly embrace. And then it's again a call of how much resilient you want to be and what cost you are ready to pay. And on the top of it, how many applications require different kind of cluster configuration. So even if you have resiliency, do you need that per application per cluster, or your applications are generic enough, cloud native enough to be able to use the generic availability of, let's say, the hardware infrastructure or the cloud type or the cluster configuration, networking configuration, security configuration as such. But I'm of a favor that yes, the tooling, the platforms, the infrastructure, the capabilities are ready, and it's just on us to openly embrace and start enabling the application on top of them.
Thanks very much, Rahul. As you said, there's a lot of layers behind that question, but it's good to hear that you're an optimist. I think more and more in the industry are. But Mark, let's hear first of all from you. Are you as optimistic as Rahul is here?
I am a glass half full sort of person, that is for sure. But I think I'll bring a different dynamic to the answer, in that I think technically and from a resource point of view, I think we can pretty much do what we'd need to do. We've thrown enough resource and finance at it. I think the question actually comes more to do with, certainly from my point of view, accountability, responsibility, and ultimately then control. When we're talking about mission critical sort of applications, mission critical networks, and in that sort of vein, then the question is what happens when it goes wrong, and where the accountability lies. The accountability ultimately lies back with me in that. But if I have little or no control over that because the responsible party handles that, and I don't have that control over that responsible party, then that becomes more of a challenge for me. So I think that plays as much a role as the technical capability to do so. We spoke on the panel session about mindset and culture change. I think that also has to be a part of it. But I think then we also have to look at how does that accountability and responsibility move, because it can't just be a case of there's LDs against it, liquidated damages against it. That doesn't resolve the issue. I'd rather there wouldn't be an issue in the first place. And have that ability to manage that and control that. So optimistic, but realistic.
Realistic, I like that. And as you say, it's not just a technical issue. This is accountability as well. So it's good to raise that. Let's go across to Ross, because this whole question is about whether the public cloud providers are in the right state to offer this mission critical high reliability network that telcos want and crave. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of echo both what Mark and Rahul said in terms of it's really about, from our perspective, one of the things that you get with automation, it becomes very easy to spin up these applications. Now, the cloud is not an amorphous thing. It's actually physical, right? It's in a city, it's in a metro, and that's physically where the compute runs. Now, you need to think about those DR, HA types of scenarios. So can you fail over very quickly? bad things will always happen. They happen in the telco data centers. They'll happen in the hyperscaler data centers. We all build on basically the same kind of technologies. You have racks of compute and storage and things like that. It's all basically the same gear fundamentally. So now how do you build a higher reliable service on top of this gear that may, have these different types of failures, or there may be issues throughout the whole end-to-end flow from the RAN all the way up into running that network functions for the core network. So it's really about how do I think about reliability, disaster, failover types of things, and via automation, can I run those trials and exercise those workloads? And so once you do that, you have confidence in that. So knowing that things may go wrong, but very quickly you can react and divert the traffic so that you still have uptime for your services. And I agree that the liquidation damages, I agree, we never want to get into that point of the discussion because that's too late. We're looking backwards. How do we prevent that? And really we prevent that by, again, having these very strong topologies that are designed, understanding bad things will happen.
Indeed. Thanks very much for that, Ross. And I think we've just had a question in from the audience that was picking up on what you were saying earlier in your answer there. So we'll just take a look at that a little bit later, hopefully. But let's quickly go back over to Rahul before we end this question and get some final thoughts from Rahul.
And I just wanted to add that, yes, it's always people, process, technologies together. In telcos, more so people than technology, because technology-wise, we always do good. And it's the transformation of the people mindset and processes which take time. And as Ross was also saying, that we can build the aspects around the technology stack very nicely, but it all have to come together to serve the purpose.
Indeed. Excellent. Thanks for those extra comments there, Rahul. Right. We are getting quite a lot of questions in today, which is fantastic news. So let's hand quickly over to Ray to continue.
Okay. Thanks, Guy. The next question is, how important is it for public cloud companies to hire staff with telco operations experience? Do they need teams of ex-telco engineers to gain the trust of telco customers? Ross, maybe we can come to you on this one. I mean, we've certainly seen over the years a number of people cross over from the telecom operator side to the public cloud side. Is that something that's sort of strengthening the ability of companies like Microsoft Azure to engage with the operators?
Yeah, we've done this very deliberately. And so you see Sean had come over from a tier one operator coming over to help us on the Azure for Operators team. Microsoft's made acquisitions of Firm Networks, Metaswitch Networks, so we get that Telco DNA. It's really about empathy and understanding the customer's problem. What are the challenges? What is unique? And how do you communicate that? And one of the things we find maybe a bit unique with as we work with the operators is the operating model. Right. So the ops team, how does the ops team manage what's going on? And so having that telco DNA on our side now allows us to have better conversations, build better products and better processes around our tooling that more seamlessly integrate with the existing operating models that exist at the operator. But I think it's very critical that you have that telco DNA, and more fundamentally from a hyperscaler perspective, do we understand the customer's problem? Are we building the right processes and tooling and feature sets that address the customer's pain? And in this case, the telco. So having that DNA on our side helps us better understand and have deeper technical conversations and drive the product roadmap further on by having that understanding.
Okay, thanks, Ross. And Rahul, you wanted to come in on this one as well. I guess, the skills side of thing, the people side of thing, as you mentioned, is pretty important.
So I think the question has to be two-way. I think both sides need to hire people from either side. But just to answer the question, I've been a product manager for telco application automation for most part of my career. If you ask any product manager what is the hardest phase of product development or product lifecycle, they'll say adoption. So the product is as good as the number of users onboarded onto that. So the same goes with even infrastructure cloud and the automation possibilities. So I think it's great to have people actually who have worked and spent time on. I hope the flow of the information and people movement continues, because when you have the actual user perspective personas and people who have lived the life and want to use the product in certain purposeful way, it's always good to get these inputs and always help the product team actually to have that perspective coming in. Even if we are not building the MVP with that perspective, but the roadmap and also the connection with the future customers becomes a little more easier, and you talk the same language, you talk the same verbose. We as humans are great with communication, and we are as bad as possible, because if we use terms like day 0, day 1, day 2, some people would understand, some would not. If you start using hyperscaler terms, probably will happen the same. So the movement of people actually help the ecosystem, as long as it is helping, great for the industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely great points. And that common language, of course, has been a challenge. Well, I'm sure it's a challenge for every industry. Absolutely. Mark, you wanted to come in on this as well.
Yeah, I was going to reinforce the point that Rahul made there, actually, about we need the transfer of skills in both directions. Funny, earlier on today at lunch, talking with a few colleagues, reminiscing about our telco days and how we all seem to be getting older together. And we need that injection of ideas and freshness on that comes from that hyperscaler environment as well. I remember at a former employer, seeing that injection come from the hyperscale or public cloud environment brought a very different dynamic and a very different perspective into the conversation. But equally, it was a learning experience for that person coming in, learning about the idiosyncrasies of the telco world. So I think I was reinforcing that point. It comes from there's benefit bringing cross-pollination across both markets.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does work both ways. And maybe it can help us grow a bit younger together as well by bringing these skills on board. There's no hope for some of us, but maybe for others. Okay, Guy, back over to you for the next part of the program.
I like the way that you refer to me straight after you say there's no hope for some of us, Ray. Thanks very much. I'm feeling my age today, though, I tell you. Right, it's now time to check in with our audience poll for the Telco and Public Cloud Summit. 1 question, 7 answer options, and you can pick whichever ones you feel are the most relevant. And the question we are asking you this week is, what are the main barriers to successful telco and public cloud partnerships? And there's our options, and you can see the real-time votes right here. And of course, you can vote for more than one. And I quickly scan down there, and the votes are quite wide at this stage. 47% of you think that fear of losing control, I'm sure there's an acronym for that. Fear of losing control is one of the main barriers. Now, if you have yet to vote, then please do so, because the more votes we get, the better. We're keeping the polls open, and we'll take a look again in tomorrow's live Q&A show. Right, we still have time for more of your questions, so back over to you, Ray.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. And of course, the abbreviation for that would be FOLK. Do telcos have FOLK, fear of you losing control? It'll never catch on. Okay, Guy, thanks. Let's go to our next audience question. And the question is, the case for making partnerships with public cloud providers is done and dusted. It makes sense. Isn't it time to move on? That's... If that was the case, then we might not have this summit. But so let's find out if we need to have this summit in 2024. Mark, is the case already over? Do we need to discuss this anymore?
In light of this audience, should I say yes, it's done and move on? I don't think it is done. I think the conversation does need to carry on. But that's on a organization corporate sort of approach, because I don't necessarily believe that there is a one size fits all model for that works. And so it requires that close collaboration that we spoke about really with the last question. And so for that very reason, I think that conversation then continues. The conversation about whether they should or they shouldn't be partnerships, I think that one is done. It's now a question of understanding what works best for your organization and for my organization. And that it doesn't necessarily have to follow that everybody goes in that same route, because otherwise we lose, looking at that poll, the point, I thought it was interesting that the cost and fear of losing control and differentiation, were the two higher polling ones there. And I think that is true. You kind of lose control of your own destiny if you're not careful. And so I think that's where the conversation continues.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it would have been interesting, if we'd have asked this question 2 years ago, I think that we would have had very sort of different results, I think, and there's less fear, I think, these days about that loss of control. Rahul, let's come to you next. I mean, is it a case of, if there's an operator out there today that isn't engaging with a public cloud partner, are they really doing something wrong?
I think just for the sake of understanding how the technology is evolving and how the world is seeing different part of cloud opportunities and possibilities, they should engage if they are not. And I'm really hopeful that there is no such operator right now. The other part of the question, I believe the phase one is over, where we realize that hyperscaler do add value and there is a possibility that they are part of the ecosystem, whether you go for on-prem, whether you go for a hybrid model, and you can even pick and choose what kind of possibilities of technology stack they bring in and infrastructure they are part of it. The one most important thing which I think the ecosystem, including hyperscaler operators, apps, and more regulators need to sit together and figure out what is the win theme for whom. Of lately, we have seen that there is a feeling telcos are looking at doing a lot of things in-house. They're building a lot of products, and I'm totally in for that because I've come from an organization, I've built products. But there are always the other side of it. We also need to be collaborative in terms, like we were discussing about liabilities. We were thinking about what best model is for which telco providers, what kind of application stack resiliency they have to build together. So I think phase one, getting the foot in the door and being partners is done and dusted. But the next phase where I'm helping you, you help me, and this is where you make money, this is where I make money. Together, we provide better services, better network, and better capabilities to our customers, maybe runtime, maybe elastic, maybe agile, maybe even always available kind of themes needs to be hashed out now. And I think it'll only make us a better industry going forward.
Okay, yeah, great points there. And watch out for the next question, because we've had a question in that really follows on from some of what you said there. But Ross, let's come to you next. Is this a done deal? Telcos and public cloud partners, should everybody needs to have a partnership these days, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm kind of on one side of that fence. I think that relationship will continue to evolve. I think that the question is, virtualization is here, containerization is here. How do you unleash that potential? It's interesting when you're looking at that poll in terms of concern about vendor lock-in. From our perspective, what we're trying to do is enable more customer choice so that you can mix and match best of breed of network functions, whether they're VNFs or CNFs. And so what we want to do is standardize that infrastructure and then let the operators focus on their value add as providing the best 5G experience, for example, new services on top of 5G. How do you enable things like quality on demand? So how can you focus in on really providing better communication services to customers? And for us, what we want to do is standardize that infrastructure, but again, leave that to customer choice. So I think that relationship will continue to evolve. the advantage from the hyperscaler perspective. Like for us at Microsoft, we have a big developer ecosystem. We're investing in new technologies. You see GPT and things like that emerging very quickly, so that we can now bring those technologies to bear on some of the telco problems. So it's kind of will continue to evolve, but the fundamental question is, how can you use kind of cloud scale technologies to have a better network?
Okay, excellent, Ross. And so I think I win the bet. I said it was going to be between 30 and 40 minutes before somebody mentioned generative AI. And so I win, basically. I think I came in on the right ballpark there. Excellent. Okay, thanks very much, Ross. Guy, like you mentioned, we have had just a whole host of questions in. So let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ray. And here's that question you alluded to just a couple of minutes ago, which came in at the beginning of the show, I think. The question is, AT&T's 5G SA Core is a great example of telco and public cloud engagement, but is there an industry forum where telcos and hyperscalers can work very closely together to figure out the risks and opportunities for future networks? Is there any such industry collaboration ongoing? I'll put that to Ross in a little bit, but Rahul, I want to come to you with this one because you were talking about collaboration in your last answer there, which kind of picks up on this one. But any thoughts to collaborations and industry bodies that are looking to build on what's going on today?
I think directly and indirectly a lot, because I know most of the hyperscalers own the core network part of it. Microsoft itself did a acquisition of a firm network. So yes, collaboration. I think it's a great point, because in the sense we always have telcos and app providers into the alliances. You look into Open RAN Alliance, you look into 3GPP. Most of this commits and most of the inputs come from only these two bodies, and most of them are either talking about current set of features or what kind of challenges and use cases they feel. I believe that in the new age, my previous employers, even AT&T tried with ONAP. There are a lot of other innovative telco providers which kind of looking into building a part of stack. People have tried collaborating with private cloud players. I know a few in UK, a lot in Europe. They are talking the same language in terms of even Swearing Cloud and collaboration. There are 2 or 3 bodies which are emerging out of Europe only. And in fact, not only on the cloud perspective, but also on the insight and customer data and how to build use case on top of it. So all in all, I believe that collaboration, more and more brains working together would get greater insight and greater solutions, especially if hyperscalers comes into the mix. The thought process and mind shift, like we were talking earlier, the product thinking would become more and more part of the solution. I'm very sure in specific aspects, I've seen a lot of partners, if not hyperscalers, getting into it. For example, VMware has a RIC solution now. There are a lot of other players which are looking into the SMO ecosystem. So when we talk about SMO, ORAN comes into picture, obviously, and the RIC solution comes into picture. So I think there are a lot of hotspot into these areas, and we are seeing a lot of contribution coming from the hyperscalers, the ecosystem, which was earlier open only to the application developer ecosystems or the operator side of it. And I think with 5G coming across, the NEF function and network as a service, opening marketplaces for use cases as a service, this will only get hotter and hotter, and a lot of third parties and a lot of enablers like hyperscalers and other people will join hands and put more and more ecosystem development and enablement across it. I think that's where the collaboration is key now, because I believe that will help the transformation and mind shift happen much more faster.
Great, thanks very much, Rahul. As you say, there's a number of activities in certain areas and certain hotspots and certain aspects, but Ross, from your perspective, do you see more need for sort of longer term collaboration here to sort of look ahead a little bit about how we can strengthen collaboration between telcos and the public cloud providers? And is Microsoft interested in doing any work in this area?
Absolutely. Just a really good example. At Mobile World Congress, we were part of the GSMA Open Gateway Initiative, which is looking at network APIs. So how do you help create new scenarios that help monetize 5G networks? And from our perspective, how do we bring a developer ecosystem so innovative developers can create new types of applications that would take advantage of a 5G network? So that's one example where we're working and collaborating with a lot of the mobile operators in terms of how can that network provide information that's necessary for a new generation of edge-based applications. Right, so quality on demand is a very good example of that. Location is a good example of that. And so that's a standardization effort that we're working with, taking the Chimera APIs and then now figuring out that the next set of the business models with the Open Gateway Initiative. So that's one example. We're working, looking at RANs, very interesting. There's different technologies that we want to be part of. Again, our perspective is that we should standardize as much as possible and then allow differentiation at the higher levels. So let's standardize the more commoditized aspects of the hardware infrastructure, and that gives the operators choices on what kind of network functions they want to run. And we're all about that. As mentioned, we acquired Affirm Networks. We have our own kind of 5G core, but we're also working with the other major network function developers that provide 5G cores as well. Again, it's all about customer choice, driving innovation, driving competition, which is better for the overall industry.
Great. Thanks very much for those insights there, Ross. And in fact, Ray, do you want to pick up on what Ross was saying there?
Well, yeah, I just want to follow up because I think I get a sense. So the question came in and we kind of had to translate it a little bit. And there's clearly a lot of work going on in the industry, a lot of collaboration. You mentioned the GSMA there. There's work going on at the TM Forum, obviously the Linux Foundation has been around for a few years. But I get the feeling that the person who sent in the question is asking whether there's an industry body or any kind of forum that's looking at the bigger picture of collaboration between the public cloud players and the telcos, and looking at the bigger picture rather than technical specifics around particular interfaces and so on and so forth. Maybe at the business aspect side of things. I mean, is there a need for Ross, and maybe I can come back to you on this? Is there a need for a more general forum that brings the telcos and cloud platform players together to talk about what's needed from a higher level, from a bigger picture level?
I'm not sure about that. I think there's a lot of conversations that are going on with the various operators and all the hyperscalers. I think that kind of naturally evolves as we start looking at what products are needed to drive this forward. I don't know if another forum helps that, or that we take advantage of some of these existing forums to really drive that forward in terms of what kind of is the next generation products. So I think, it's fair to start saying, okay, 5G is getting deployed. Is 6G going to need something unique? Are there other opportunities that we should have that? But I think that ends up being a little bit more organic than kind of structured from a forum perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I get the feeling as well. What this industry doesn't need is yet another organization. I think that's long been the view, but I was just trying to translate what the person who sent in the question was asking, whether there is some kind of forum for that high level discussion, and not on a one-to-one basis, but bringing lots of different voices together. So it's not just one telco talking to one public cloud partner. Okay, thanks very much, Ross. Really appreciate that. Guy, do we have time because the time is ticking on, do we have time for one more question?
I think we can slide in a quick question if we're lucky here, because we had a question in. It's a short question. How much does it cost telcos to run their data and get advanced analytics and have data security in the public cloud? Now, we're not going to put you on the spot and ask for pennies and pounds and dollars and what have you. But maybe we could address that. Is it a costly exercise? Is it an overly costly exercise? Is it just part of the operational expenses that you'd expect to see here? Anyone want to sort of take a stab at? Yeah,
Guy, I just want to expand that because. Yeah, well, I think I'm going to broaden it out because this question cropped up on quite a few of our summits and at our great telco debate at the end of last year in person. And this was about, is it cost effective for telcos to be using the public cloud for multiple or certain applications? So I guess maybe the question here is, it's impossible for anybody to say how much does it cost, but is it cost effective and are the costs coming down for telcos to use public cloud platforms? So maybe we can open that up to the panel today. Does anybody want to have a stab at whether the costs are coming down? Is it becoming more cost effective for telcos to engage and use public cloud platforms? Rahul, did you want to come in there? Did I see you offer?
Yeah, I can. I'm actually still on the last question in terms of answering, but I'll take this first. I think somebody on the other side would be able to give the exact cost dynamics of it. But what I know is it is becoming much and much transparent in the sense that there are calculators and there are tools available on the hyperscalers and platforms to calculate that. People are getting more and more informative in case of how they want to use infrastructure as a service, platforms as a service, database as a service. Application providers are also pitching in and are much more sure now what is the minimalistic footprint they want to start with and how and when they want to scale out. There are also different forums and products available which talks about the financial aspect about and the ROI part of the cloud resources to give you the transparency and visibility that are you using your cloud to the extent it is provisioned. There are also initiatives in sustainabilities and ESG forums where the transparency among how well is your infrastructure being utilized, how all the data centers are loaded are also monitored because you are calculating, if not on the resources or ROI perspective, but on the sustainability angle as well. So I think people are getting, and the forums and ecosystem are getting much more informed. There are products and innovation happening day and night along the same site, which tells you how the cloud infrastructure should be provisioned and is provisioned. Still, we see a lot of use cases, blogs and forums reaching out and saying that it's still costly and it's an ecosystem where you get logged in. You saw the poll result as well. People still believe that it's kind of lock-in. On the other side, as I still believe that it's just an enabler. It's a technology. The same can happen with your data center. You have to manage it, great. But the same pain and same optimized utilization and dimensioning will come to you even if you're using on-prem. And again, it's more about how do you templarize, how do you build your cluster architecture, what kind of application stack you're using. And on the lock-in perspective, I think it's more on what kind of organization and skill set we have internally. So yes, transparency, visibility, and the possibility to make it an optimized model is there. Lock-ins and other aspects do come with any kind of technology. I'll take 30 seconds more to answer the previous question as well. I personally believe that we need a forum, not just for the sake of another forum in the ecosystem, but forum which talks about the bigger picture. For example, if we are launching 5G, what are the business use cases? What is it for the customers on day zero? And what kind of customers, what kind of monetization model? If operator has to launch a 5G network and a 5G on basis of elastic network, cloud native network, what are they giving to the customers and what are they gaining out of it? Because what we have seen is a lot of influx, a lot of investments, not great results. Maybe, and as an operator, I will be transparent enough to my customers to say, we have taken a decision to stay on 4G for next quarter or 2 quarters, and we'll see when we need. If you need 5G customer success or 5G services, let us know. So I still believe that there are possibilities where we as an industry can come together and say, this is how you can use my platform for designing your service. This is what you can use my platform for monitoring. And by the way, all the hyperscaler do provide different versions of it. How do you use that is on you. And then also they come together to say, let's define the architecture guidelines for principles for cloud native applications. And it can be larger things which help all the people and all the aspects of lifecycle managing a network, customer experience, operations in the end, all of us are looking for optimization, capex, opex, greater customer experience, greater value, new use cases to be taken to the market much more faster. So I won't mind a forum which is open enough, and we do talk about big picture and tactical and both strategical domains, and even take practical decisions, not just follow what everyone is doing.
Okay, interesting, Rahul. Thanks very much. So just swinging back there to the cost side of things, we'll come to Mark and then we'll finish off with Ross. So Mark, do you think it's becoming more cost effective for service providers to be using public cloud platforms?
I think, as Rahul's mentioned, I think it's becoming more understood. And the pricing model, the structures are becoming more understood and thereby perhaps more accepted. And that I think it's a question of whether that model suits you as an operator or suits you as for your business. And I don't think it does suit every operator, every model. So that would be my take on the pricing structure and on that. And I will avoid Raul's previous comments there, just sparked off some very interesting thoughts, but we haven't got time for that, on a whole heap of different subjects about monetization and the demand and the technology-led use cases rather than demand-driven. Interesting, but subject for another day.
And there's always another day on TelecomTV, Mark, as I'm sure you know. But not right now, of course, he says, going into rapid reverse because we're almost out of time on today's show. But Ross, we'll finish with you. The question was kind of specific about, how much does it cost to engage and get data analytics and security applications on the public cloud. But I think, if we stick to generalisms here, is it becoming more cost effective, or as Rahul and Mark have mentioned, is it just becoming clearer about what the costs are?
Yeah, I agree. It's becoming more clear what the costs are. The way to think about this is, do you do the exact same things you did yesterday as you do tomorrow? And with this kind of analytics, are there new types of insights that you can gain? And then it becomes more of a value conversation. How we think about it fundamentally is like, when I grab data, is it actionable? Is it useful for me to have it? Now, there is some compliance stuff that needs to be stored long term. Okay, we get that. But beyond that, what's the actionable? What value do I get from having this data? And the cloud pricing is very transparent. You can see that. So it allows for a deeper conversation of, why do I need this data? How can I use it? But again, that pricing is transparent. So I think it's getting more understood. But really, it's like, what are the new opportunities I have when I do this analytics on that type of data?
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Ross. Okay, well, I think, we have reached our time limit on today's show. So I'll hand back over to Guy.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ray. I've now got to go and work out a whole new day of content based on those last answers. There's so much more we can extract from that. This is it's really exciting. But we are out of time now, so thank you so much to our guests who joined us for this live program, and to our audience for your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions today. But do remember to send in your questions for the live Q&A show that's happening tomorrow as soon as you can. Don't leave it too late. And also don't forget that poll. There's still time for you to have your say and to influence the outcome. So before you do anything else, and I mean anything else at all, vote now.
Yes. Vote now. And please join us tomorrow for the second day of our Telcos and Public Cloud Summit. And we've got a panel discussion for you on multi-cloud, an interview with China Telecom, plus, of course, our final live Q&A show. Don't miss it. Goodbye for now.